I still remember the taste of my morning coffee turning bitter in my mouth as I stared at the notification on my phone that Wednesday morning. Anonymous email. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. Sometimes I wonder how different my life would be if I had just hit that delete button and continued living in blissful ignorance. The subject line was simple. Something you need to know about Marcus. Before we dive back in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is something truly special I can't wait to share. Marcus. My husband. Of 15 years. The man I'd built everything with. Our home in the prestigious Willowbrook neighborhood of Denver. Our twin daughters who were now 13. And most importantly, our thriving marketing consultancy firm, Hartwell Associates. We'd started it 7 years ago in our garage, and now we employed 43 people across 2 floors of a gleaming office building in downtown Denver's business district. I was sitting in my corner office on the 32nd floor, reviewing quarterly reports before our 9 a.m. staff meeting, when that email arrived at exactly 7:47 a.m. The sender was listed as A Friend 2024 protonmail.com, clearly someone who wanted to remain anonymous. My finger hovered over the delete button. Anonymous emails were never good news, but something made me click it open. Dear Vivian, it began, using my full name instead of Viv, which most people called me. I debated for weeks whether to send this, but I believe you deserve to know the truth about your husband Marcus and his assistant, Celeste Morrison. They've been having an affair for the past 6 months. Every Tuesday and Thursday they meet at the Grandview Suites on Maple Street, room 237. Today is Thursday. Check his calendar. He'll have a client lunch with the Pemberton account blocked from 12:30 to 3 p.m. There is no Pemberton account. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but someone had to. The email was unsigned. I read it 3 times before the words actually penetrated my brain. Marcus and Celeste, my husband and his assistant. The same Celeste I had personally interviewed and hired 8 months ago when our company was expanding rapidly and Marcus needed administrative support. Celeste with her warm smile and impressive organizational skills. Fresh out of Colorado State University with a business administration degree. 24 years old, enthusiastic and ambitious. The same Celeste who had sent me a thoughtful birthday card just last month, thanking me for being such an inspiring female leader in business. The same Celeste who had volunteered to help coordinate our annual company charity drive for the Denver Children's Hospital. The same Celeste who had joined us for our family barbecue just 6 weeks ago, bringing her husband Derek and their adorable 2-year-old daughter Emma Derek. I remembered him, clearly, tall, quiet, with gentle eyes and calloused hands that spoke of manual work. He'd mentioned he was an IT specialist, currently between jobs but looking for something in cybersecurity. He'd been polite, helpful, and had spent most of the barbecue playing with Emma while Celeste networked with our other employees. They'd seemed like such a solid young couple. My hands were trembling as I set down my coffee mug. The logical part of my brain was screaming that this was probably just malicious gossip, maybe from a disgruntled former employee or a competitor trying to stir up trouble. But another part of me, a part I'd been trying to silence for months, whispered that this actually explained things that hadn't quite made sense lately. Like how Marcus had suddenly developed a passionate interest in the operational efficiency of our administrative processes, spending long hours working late with Celeste to streamline workflows. Like how he'd started taking more client lunches, always with vague explanations about potential new accounts that never seemed to materialize into actual contracts. Like how he'd begun working out again after years of making excuses. Suddenly, caring about his appearance and buying new cologne that I'd never seen him wear around me. Like how our conversations had become increasingly superficial, focusing on logistics about the girls' school schedules or business operations, never diving into the deeper thoughts and dreams we used to share during our evening walks around Willowbrook's tree-lined streets. I grabbed my phone and opened Marcus's shared calendar, something we'd always maintained for family coordination. There it was, exactly as the email had predicted. Client lunch, Pemberton account, 12:33 p.m. I scrolled back through previous weeks. Every Tuesday and Thursday for the past several months, there were similar blocks. Pemberton account, development. Pemberton contract negotiations. Pemberton strategic planning session. I'd been so busy managing my own client portfolio and overseeing our creative team that I'd never questioned these recurring appointments. Marcus handled business development. I trusted him to manage his schedule appropriately. We'd built our company on mutual trust and complementary skills. He was the relationship builder. I was the strategist and creative director. My office door was closed, but through the glass wall, I could see the bustling activity of our open-plan workspace. Our employees arriving for the day, grabbing coffee from the kitchen area, settling into their ergonomic workstations surrounded by our carefully curated collection of motivational art and living plants. This was our dream realized. A company, culture built on innovation, respect, and collaboration. At 8:15 a.m., I watched Marcus arrive through the main entrance, looking handsome in his navy blue suit and burgundy tie. He moved through the office with easy confidence, greeting employees by name, stopping to chat with our lead graphic designer about a project deadline. He caught my eye through my office window and flashed that charming smile that had first attracted me to him at a business networking event 16 years ago. He pointed to his watch and mouthed, "Meeting in 45 minutes," before heading to his own corner office. Then, at 8:23 a.m., Celeste walked through the same entrance. She looked polished and professional in a cream-colored blouse and black pencil skirt, her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She carried herself with the confident stride of someone who belonged here, who was valued and appreciated. She waved at several colleagues before heading directly to Marcus's office with a stack of files. I watched through the glass as she knocked on his doorframe and entered. Even from across the office, I could see their body language as they reviewed documents together. Nothing overtly inappropriate. They maintained professional distance, focused on the papers between them. But now, knowing what I knew, I noticed things I'd somehow missed before. The way Celeste's hand lingered a moment too long when she handed him a file. The way Marcus's eyes followed her when she moved around his office. The way they both smiled just a little too warmly at whatever private joke he'd just made. At 8:35 a.m., my assistant knocked on my door to remind me about our staff meeting. I gathered my quarterly reports, straightened my blazer, and prepared to walk into that conference room to discuss business growth and strategic planning with the man who was apparently living a double life. As I walked toward the conference room, watching Marcus already seated at the head of the long mahogany table and Celeste taking notes in her leather portfolio, one thought crystallized in my mind with startling clarity. I wasn't going to confront him. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with and had a plan for how to handle it. Because if there was one thing 15 years of marriage and 7 years of building a business had taught me, it was that emotional reactions rarely led to optimal outcomes. Strategic thinking, patience, and careful planning, those were the tools that had built everything I valued in my life. And if Marcus thought he could destroy what we'd built together while underestimating my ability to protect it, he was about to learn just how wrong he could be. It took a lot of care and time to prepare and narrate this for you, so if you're enjoying it, a quick subscribe really helps and means the world to us. All right, let's get back to it. The staff meeting felt like an out-of-body experience. I sat in my usual chair to Marcus's right, discussing Q3 revenue projections and the upcoming product launch for our biggest client, Technovision Industries, while my mind raced with a single question. Was my husband really having an affair with the woman sitting 3 seats down from me, diligently taking notes in her pristine handwriting? As Marcus presented the business development pipeline, mentioning several promising prospects in various stages of negotiation, I found myself studying his face for signs of deception. Was he lying about those prospects the same way he was? Apparently lying about the Pemberton account. How many other fictional clients existed in his carefully constructed alternate reality? The meeting ended at 10:30 a.m., and I retreated to my office with a clear mission. If I was going to make any decisions about my marriage, my business, and my future, I needed facts, not anonymous accusations. I started with our company's financial records, something I had complete access to as co-founder and CFO. Opening our American Express business account online, I searched for any charges at the Grandview Suites. My heart sank as I found them immediately. A pattern of charges every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 6 months, always for $127.50, always processed between 12 OX and 1 p.m. The charges were categorized under client entertainment and had been approved by Marcus without any supporting documentation. Next, I pulled up our company credit card statements going back a full year. The Grandview Suites charges had started in early March, about 2 weeks after Celeste had completed her probationary period and received her permanent employment contract. Before March, Marcus's client entertainment expenses had been sporadic and always included detailed receipts for actual restaurants with legitimate business purposes. But the pattern that emerged made my stomach clench. Every Tuesday and Thursday since March 15th, there was a Grandview Suites charge, followed by additional expenses that told a story I didn't want to believe. Charges at Romano's wine bar for 2 glasses of champagne. Purchases at Fletcher's boutique, expensive items that had never appeared in our home. A recurring monthly charge at Serenity Spa for couples massage packages. I cross-referenced these dates with Marcus's calendar entries. Every single hotel charge aligned perfectly with a Pemberton account meeting or some variation. Pemberton contract review, Pemberton site visit, Pemberton strategy session. The fictional client had been remarkably consistent in their scheduling. My hands were shaking as I pulled up our business insurance records, specifically our key person life insurance policies. 3 weeks ago, Marcus had increased his coverage and added Celeste as a beneficiary for a $50,000 policy, listing her as essential administrative personnel. When I'd questioned him about it during our weekly business review, he'd explained it as a standard practice for retaining valuable employees. I'd trusted his judgment and approved the expense. Now that decision took on a sinister new meaning. I opened our employee files and reviewed Celeste's hiring documents. Her resume showed a gap between graduating from Colorado State in December and starting with us in January. When I'd asked about it during her interview, she'd mentioned taking time to evaluate the best career opportunities. Looking at it now, I wondered if that time had been spent researching our company, learning about our marriage, and identifying Marcus as a target. Her emergency contact information listed Derek Morrison as her husband, with a phone number and an address in the Riverside district, a modest neighborhood about 20 minutes from our office. Her employment application showed they'd been married for 3 years and had 1 child together. I picked up my phone and did something I'd never done before. I called to verify a reference that we'd already checked months ago. Celeste had listed her previous supervisor at Mountain Peak Marketing, a smaller firm where she'd worked as an intern during college. "Oh yes, Celeste," the supervisor said when I reached her. "Bright girl, very ambitious. Though I have to say, I was surprised when she left Denver right after graduation. She'd mentioned having some personal situation to sort out before starting her career." "Personal situation?" I pressed gently. "Something about needing to relocate, for family reasons." She seemed quite determined about it, actually. Said she had specific goals about where she wanted to work and was willing to wait for the right opportunity. After hanging up, I sat staring at my computer screen, pieces of a puzzle forming a picture I desperately didn't want to see. Had Celeste specifically targeted our company? Had she researched us, learned about our success, our marriage, our lifestyle, and decided Marcus was worth pursuing? I opened a private browser window and searched for Derek Morrison's professional background. His LinkedIn profile showed he was indeed an IT security specialist, with impressive credentials from several major companies in Colorado Springs. He'd been laid off from his most recent position at CyberShield Technologies in February, right around the time Celeste would have been job hunting. The timeline was becoming clearer and more disturbing. Derek loses his job in February. Celeste applies for a position with our company in late February. They hire her in January. She starts targeting Marcus immediately, and by March they're meeting twice a week at the Grandview Suites. But what really made my blood run cold was Derek's area of expertise, listed prominently on his LinkedIn profile. Digital forensics, electronic surveillance, and cybersecurity threat assessment. This wasn't just a betrayed husband I was looking at. This was someone with the exact skills needed to uncover digital evidence of infidelity. Did Derek know about his wife's affair? Was he complicit in some larger scheme? Or was he as much a victim as I was? I pulled up our company's organizational chart and studied the reporting structure. Celeste reported directly to Marcus, but she also had access to sensitive information about our client contracts, financial processes, and strategic planning. As his assistant, she attended confidential meetings, handled sensitive correspondence, and had administrative access to systems that contained our most valuable business intelligence. If she was feeding information to a competitor, or if she and Marcus were planning to leave and take clients with them, the damage could be catastrophic. My intercom buzzed. "Mrs. Hartwell?" It was Janet, my assistant. "Mr. Hartwell asked me to remind you about the Denver Business Council lunch tomorrow. He wanted to confirm you're still planning to attend together." The Denver Business Council lunch, an annual networking event where Marcus and I traditionally appeared as the successful husband and wife entrepreneurial team. The irony was almost laughable. "Yes, Janet, I'll be there, thank you." As she disconnected, I realized that tomorrow's lunch would be the perfect opportunity to do something I'd never done before. Observe Marcus and Celeste when they didn't know I was watching. The event was large enough that I could position myself strategically and see how they interacted in a social setting. But first, I needed to visit the Grandview Suites myself. At 11:45 a.m., I told Janet I was leaving for an early lunch and drove across town to Maple Street. The Grandview Suites turned out to be a discreet, upscale, extended-stay hotel popular with business travelers, the kind of place that catered to privacy and asked few questions. I parked across the street and called the hotel's main number from my car. "Good morning, Grandview Suites. How can I help you?" "Hi, I'm trying to reach my husband. He's in a business meeting there today, and I need to get an urgent message to him. Could you connect me to room 237? "I'm sorry, ma'am, but I don't show any guests registered in that room today." "Oh, that's strange. He specifically mentioned room 237. Maybe it's a conference room?" "Let me check. We do have a suite that's been reserved regularly for business meetings. Would you like me to connect you to our business center?" Before I could respond, she continued, "Actually, I see that suite is currently occupied. Would you like to leave a message?" My heart pounded. "No, that's okay. I'll try his cell phone instead." I hung up and checked the time. 12:10 p.m. Marcus's calendar showed his Pemberton meeting starting at 12:30. If the anonymous email was correct, he and Celeste would be arriving any minute. I repositioned my car to have a clear view of the hotel entrance and waited. At 12:28 p.m., a familiar silver BMW pulled into the hotel parking lot. Marcus's car. I watched as he got out, looked around briefly, and walked confidently toward the entrance. He moved like someone who'd done this many times before. At 12:31 p.m., a blue Honda Civic arrived. Celeste stepped out, wearing a different outfit than she'd had on at the office, a flowing sundress instead of her professional attire. She'd let her hair down and reapplied her makeup. She looked like a woman preparing for a romantic rendezvous, not a business meeting. She walked toward the hotel entrance with the same confident stride. but paused at the door to check her reflection in the glass before going inside. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes, processing what I'd just witnessed. The anonymous email was true. My husband of 15 years was having an affair with his 24-year-old assistant, and they were bold enough to conduct it in broad daylight, on company time, using company funds. But as I drove back to the office, I realized I felt something unexpected alongside the betrayal and hurt. A cold, calculating anger. Not the explosive, emotional fury I might have expected, but a strategic rage that demanded justice and retribution. Marcus thought he was smarter than me. He thought he could lie to my face while destroying our marriage and potentially our business. He thought I was too trusting, too busy, or too naive to notice what was happening right under my nose. He was about to learn exactly how wrong he could be. That afternoon, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of confronting him, instead of breaking down, instead of demanding explanations, I was going to do something far more effective. I was going to outsmart him at his own game. The Denver Business Council lunch was held at the prestigious Millennium Hotel downtown, and I arrived 30 minutes early to position myself strategically. I chose a table near the back with a clear view of the main networking area, telling the event coordinator I was expecting my husband to join me shortly, but wanted to start connecting with potential clients. Marcus arrived at exactly 1:15 p.m., looking impeccable in his charcoal gray suit and confident smile. I watched him work the room with practiced ease, shaking hands with city council members, chatting with fellow business owners, and playing the role of successful entrepreneur perfectly. To anyone watching, he was simply Marcus Hartwell, respected, co-founder of a thriving marketing consultancy. But I was watching for something different now. At 1:23 p.m., Celeste entered the ballroom. She wasn't supposed to be here. This was an executive-level networking event, and administrative staff weren't typically included. Yet there she was, wearing an elegant black cocktail dress that was far more expensive than her salary should have allowed, her hair styled professionally, moving through the crowd with surprising confidence for someone who should have felt out of place. I watched Marcus's face when he spotted her across the room. The change was subtle but unmistakable. His expression softened. His smile became more genuine and his posture straightened slightly. It was the look of a man seeing someone he was genuinely excited to see, not an employee he worked with every day. They didn't approach each other immediately. Instead, they moved through separate sections of the room for nearly 20 minutes, both networking appropriately, both maintaining perfect professional behavior, but I could see the magnetic pull between them. Marcus would glance in her direction when he thought no one was looking. Celeste would position herself so she had a clear view of him while talking to other attendees. Finally, at 1:47 p.m., they ended up in the same conversation circle discussing the upcoming Denver Innovation Summit. I couldn't hear their words from my distance, but their body language told a story that made my chest tighten. They stood just slightly closer than colleagues should. When Celeste made a point about social media marketing trends, Marcus touched her arm briefly while nodding, enthusiastically. When someone made a joke, they shared a look that lasted a beat too long. Most telling was what happened when Marcus excused himself to get a drink. Celeste waited exactly 30 seconds, then followed him to the bar area. They stood side by side, ordering drinks, not talking but existing in each other's space with an intimacy that spoke of private jokes and shared secrets. I pulled out my phone and texted Marcus. Running late from client call. Go ahead and eat without me. See you back at office. His response came immediately. No problem. Just networking. Love you. The casual lie rolled off his fingers as easily as it probably rolled off his tongue. While he was texting me about just networking, Celeste was standing close enough to read his phone screen, a small smile playing at her lips. I left the lunch early and drove back to the office, my mind racing with a plan that was crystallizing with startling clarity. I couldn't continue pretending everything was normal while gathering evidence. The stress was affecting my work, my sleep, and my ability to parent my daughters effectively. But more importantly, the longer I waited, the more damage Marcus and Celeste could do to our business, because I was now certain this wasn't just about an affair. The way Celeste had navigated that networking event, the expensive dress, her comfort level with executives far above her pay grade, this was a woman with ambitions that extended far beyond being Marcus's assistant. And Marcus, blinded by infatuation, was probably sharing confidential information, client strategies, and business intelligence that could be used against our company. Back at my desk, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I picked up my phone and called a number I'd memorized from Derek Morrison's LinkedIn profile. "Hello?" The voice was deep, cautious. "Hi, is this Derek Morrison?" "Yes. Who's this?" "This is Vivian Hartwell from Hartwell Associates. We met briefly at our company barbecue a few weeks ago. You're Celeste's husband." A pause. "Oh, yes. Hi, Mrs. Hartwell. Is everything okay?" His tone was polite but guarded, and I wondered if he already suspected why I might be calling. "I'm calling because we have an opening in our IT security department, and I remembered you mentioning you were between positions. Would you be interested in discussing a potential opportunity?" Another pause, longer this time. That's very kind of you to think of me. What kind of position?" "Senior cybersecurity analyst, reporting directly to me. We've been needing someone to overhaul our digital security protocols and implement more robust monitoring systems. Your background in digital forensics would be particularly valuable." "That sounds interesting. When would you want to meet?" "How about tomorrow morning? Say 9 a.m. in my office?" "I'll be there. Thank you for thinking of me, Mrs. Hartwell." After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, both excited and terrified by what I'd just set in motion. If Derek was unaware of his wife's affair, this conversation was going to destroy his world. If he was aware, or worse, if he was complicit in some scheme, I was potentially bringing a threat directly into our company. But I had to take the risk, because Derek Morrison possessed exactly the skills I needed to uncover the full scope of what Marcus and Celeste were doing, and his personal stake in the situation would ensure his complete dedication to finding the truth. That evening, I maintained perfect normalcy at home. I helped my daughters Emma and Sophie with their algebra homework, listened to Sophie's excitement about making the junior varsity soccer team, and Emma's drama about her best friend dating someone she didn't approve of. Normal teenage concerns that felt like treasures of innocence in contrast to the adult deceptions I was navigating. Marcus arrived home at 6:45 p.m., kissing my cheek and asking about my day with the same casual affection he'd shown for months while lying to my face. "How was the business lunch?" he asked, loosening his tie. "Sorry you missed it." "Oh, you know how client calls can run long," I replied, watching his face carefully. "How was the networking? Anyone interesting?" "The usual crowd, a few potential leads, but nothing concrete yet." He moved around our kitchen with easy familiarity, pouring himself a glass of wine from the bottle we'd opened over the weekend. "Did I mention I'm thinking of promoting Celeste? She's really proven herself invaluable to the business development side." My hand tightened slightly on the dish towel I was holding, but I kept my voice level. "Oh? What kind of promotion?" "Maybe business development coordinator. Give her more client-facing responsibilities. A significant raise. She has great instincts for relationship building." "I bet she does," I thought grimly. "That's a big jump from administrative assistant. Are you sure she's ready for that level of responsibility?" "I think we should trust people to grow into their potential," Marcus said, and I wondered if he could hear the irony in his own words. "Besides, she's already handling a lot of client coordination informally. Might as well make it official." "What? About Derek?" I asked casually. "Her husband seemed nice at the barbecue. Still looking for work?" Marcus shrugged. "I think so. Why?" Just wondering. He seemed like he had good skills. Maybe we could help somehow. Maybe, Marcus said absently, already scrolling through his phone. Though I'm not sure we need anyone in his field right now. The dismissive way he spoke about Derek made my jaw clench. Marcus was so focused on his affair with Celeste that he couldn't even see the strategic opportunity of having someone with Derek's skills in our company. Or perhaps he could see it and preferred not to have someone around who might uncover his activities. That night, after Marcus fell asleep beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling and finalizing my plan. Tomorrow, I would offer Derek Morrison a job that would place him directly within our company's information systems. I would give him access to everything he needed to uncover the truth about what his wife and my husband were doing. And if Derek proved trustworthy, if he was as much a victim in this situation as I was, then together we would systematically document every lie, every betrayal, and every potentially criminal action Marcus and Celeste had committed. Marcus thought he was playing a game where I didn't even know the rules. He thought his charm and my trust would continue to blind me to his deceptions. He thought he could restructure our company to benefit his mistress while I remained obliviously focused on client work and our children. Tomorrow, I would begin teaching him just how catastrophically wrong those assumptions were. The irony was perfect. Marcus's affair with Celeste was about to bring her husband directly into position to destroy them both. And the man who had dismissed Derek as irrelevant was about to discover that Derek Morrison was exactly the ally I needed to take back everything they thought they could steal from me. Derek Morrison arrived at my office at exactly 9 a.m. wearing a crisp navy suit that looked like it had been purchased specifically for this interview. He was taller than I remembered from the barbecue, with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from technical expertise rather than social charm. His handshake was firm, his eye contact direct, and there was something in his expression that suggested he knew this meeting was about more than just a job opportunity. "Thank you for considering me for this position, Mrs. Hartwell," he said as he settled into the chair across from my desk. "I have to admit, I was surprised by your call." I studied his face carefully, looking for any hint that he might already know why I was really interested in hiring him. "Please call me Vivian, and I should be transparent with you, Derek. This position is critical to our company's security, and I need someone I can trust completely. Someone who understands that discretion is paramount in this role." Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, or wariness. "I understand. In my previous positions, I've often dealt with sensitive information that required the highest levels of confidentiality." I pulled out a folder containing a carefully crafted job description I'd written the night before. The role involves comprehensive cybersecurity oversight, including monitoring all company communications, financial transactions, and data access. You'd be responsible for identifying any unusual patterns, unauthorized access, or potential security breaches. As I handed him the document, our eyes met, and I saw something that made my pulse quicken. Derek's expression had shifted subtly, becoming more focused, more alert. He wasn't just reading a job description, he was processing the implications of what I was asking him to do. "This is quite comprehensive," he said slowly, scanning the document. "Full access to email servers, financial systems, employee activity logs. This level of monitoring would reveal any irregular patterns across the entire organization." "Exactly. We've grown rapidly, and I'm concerned about potential vulnerabilities. I need someone who can see the complete picture of our digital ecosystem and identify any threats, whether they come from outside or—" I paused meaningfully. "From within." Derek set down the paper and looked directly at me. "Vivian, may I ask you something directly?" My heart rate accelerated. "Of course. Is there a specific security concern that's prompted this sudden need for comprehensive monitoring? Because the scope of access you're describing would typically be implemented in response to a known threat or suspicious activity." This was the moment of truth. I could continue dancing around the real reason, or I could trust this man with the truth and hope that his integrity matched what I'd observed at our barbecue. I made my choice. Derek, I'm going to be completely honest with you, and I hope you'll extend me the same courtesy. 3 days ago, I received information suggesting that someone within our company may be engaged in activities that could compromise both our business interests and our personal lives. I need to know the truth, and I need evidence that would stand up under scrutiny. His face went very still. What kind of activities? I opened my laptop and turned it toward him, showing him the pattern of charges I'd discovered. Hotel expenses, charged to our business account, twice weekly for 6 months, always during supposed client meetings that don't correspond to any actual clients in our system. Derek studied the screen, his expression growing darker with each line item. The Grandview Suites, he said quietly. You know it? He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was fighting some internal battle. When he finally spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Celeste has been working late a lot lately, Tuesday and Thursday evenings, specifically. She always comes home talking about important projects, strategic planning sessions with senior management. The pieces were falling into place with horrible clarity. Derek, I need you to know that these charges are being made during business hours, not in the evenings, between 12:30 and 3 p.m. consistently. I watched the implications hit him like a physical blow. His hands clenched slightly, and he closed his eyes briefly before opening them with a new hardness I hadn't seen before. How long have you known? He asked. Suspected. About 6 months, if I'm honest with myself. Knew for certain? 3 days. And you want to hire me to prove it. I want to hire you to uncover the complete truth, whatever that might be. If I'm wrong, then we'll have implemented excellent security protocols and I'll owe you an apology. If I'm right, I let the sentence hang in the air. Derek leaned back in his chair, processing everything I'd told him. You realize that if you're correct, and if I take this position, I'll be in a position to document evidence that could destroy both our marriages. I realize that, but I also realize that living with lies and betrayal is destroying me already, and potentially our business as well. I need to know what we're really dealing with. He nodded slowly. What exactly would my responsibilities include? I pulled out another document, a detailed technical specification I'd researched extensively the night before. Complete overhaul of our network security, implementation of comprehensive monitoring systems, and regular security audits. You'd report directly to me with full authority to investigate any suspicious activity. And the monitoring would include executive-level communications? Everyone, no exceptions. Derek studied the technical requirements, and I could see his professional mind engaging with the challenge. This is sophisticated work. The kind of system you're describing would capture everything. Emails, file transfers, website visits, application usage, even keystroke logging if necessary. Is that something you can implement? Absolutely. My previous employer used similar systems for compliance monitoring. But Vivian, once we implement this level of surveillance, there's no going back. If there are secrets in this company, we're going to uncover all of them. I thought about Marcus's dismissive comments about Derek the night before, his casual assumption that someone in Derek's field wasn't needed at our company. The irony was almost poetic. When could you start? How soon do you need me? Tomorrow, if possible. I want the systems in place before... I paused, then decided to be completely honest. Before they realize what we're doing. Derek stood up and extended his hand. I accept the position. And Vivian? Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discover the truth. I've been living with suspicions for months, but I never had the means to confirm them. As we shook hands, I felt a strange combination of relief and terror. I was no longer facing this situation alone, but I'd also just set in motion a chain of events that would inevitably explode both our lives. There's one more thing, Derek. We need to be extremely careful about how we handle this. If our suspicions are correct, then Marcus and Celeste have been conducting their affair right under our noses while maintaining perfect professional facades. They're clearly intelligent and careful. We can't give them any reason to suspect what we're doing. Understood. As far as anyone knows, you hired me to implement routine security upgrades because of industry best practices and company growth. Exactly. And Derek, I want you to know that whatever we discover, we'll handle it together. Neither of us has to face this alone. After Derek left, I sat in my office feeling a mixture of anticipation and dread. In 24 hours, I would have someone with the technical skills to uncover every digital trace of Marcus and Celeste's betrayal. But I would also have to continue pretending that nothing had changed, that I was still the trusting wife who believed her husband's lies about client meetings and business development. The most challenging part would be introducing Derek to the team, especially to Marcus and Celeste, without revealing the true nature of his role. I would have to watch their faces when they met the man who would ultimately expose their deception, knowing that they had no idea what was coming. That afternoon, I sent an email to all staff announcing our new cybersecurity initiative and Derek's hiring. I kept the language professional and routine, emphasizing our commitment to protecting client data and company assets as we continued to grow. Marcus's response was immediate. Great hire. Looking forward to meeting him. Any particular reason for the sudden focus on cybersecurity? I typed back. Just being proactive. Better safe than sorry in today's business environment. What I didn't tell him was that Derek Morrison was about to become the most dangerous person in Marcus's carefully constructed world of lies. And the beautiful irony was that Marcus would probably welcome him warmly, never suspecting that he was shaking hands with the man who would ultimately destroy him. Derek's first day at Hartwell Associates was a Tuesday, which I now knew was one of Marcus and Celeste's regular meeting days at the Grandview Suites. I had deliberately chosen this timing, wanting to establish Derek's presence and access before their next scheduled rendezvous. I introduced Derek to the team during our 9 a.m. staff meeting, watching carefully as Marcus and Celeste met the man who would soon expose their secrets. Marcus was his usual charming self, welcoming Derek with enthusiasm and making jokes about finally having someone who could fix his perpetually slow laptop. Celeste smiled warmly and mentioned how nice it was to have Derek joining the team, adding that she looked forward to working with him on any administrative aspects of the security upgrades. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't known the truth, I would have seen nothing more than a friendly executive and his capable assistant welcoming a new colleague. Derek played his part perfectly as well, presenting himself as a straightforward IT professional grateful for the opportunity. He mentioned his excitement about implementing modern security protocols and ensuring the company's digital assets were properly protected. No one in that room, except Derek and me, understood the double meaning behind his words. After the meeting, I gave Derek a tour of our facilities, officially showing him our server room, network infrastructure, and the office layout. Privately, I was pointing out sightlines, security camera positions, and the proximity of Marcus's office to Celeste's desk. I'll need about a week to fully implement the monitoring systems, Derek told me quietly as we stood in the server room. But I can start with basic email and network traffic analysis immediately. Do whatever you need to do. You have my complete authorization. By 10 a.m., Derek was installed at his new workstation, strategically positioned where he could observe the main office area while appearing to focus on his computer screens. I returned to my normal routine, attending client calls and reviewing campaign proposals, but part of my attention remained on Derek's steady work and the predictable patterns of Marcus and Celeste's behavior. At 11:45 a.m., I watched Marcus approach Celeste's desk. They had a brief conversation, both checking their phones, before Marcus announced to the nearby staff that he was heading out for a client lunch. Celeste mentioned she was taking her lunch break as well, planning to run some personal errands. Derek caught my eye across the office and gave an almost imperceptible nod. He was watching too. At 2:47 p.m., Derek knocked on my office door. Vivian, do you have a few minutes? I've found some irregularities in our network usage that I'd like to discuss. I closed my door and activated the white noise machine I'd recently installed, ostensibly for client confidentiality during sensitive calls. What did you find? Derek pulled out a tablet showing network analysis charts. I've been monitoring data flows since this morning, and there are some interesting patterns. For instance, both Marcus and Celeste's devices show consistent periods of inactivity during business hours, specifically Tuesday and Thursday afternoons between 12:30 and 3 p.m. Meaning their computers, phones, and any company devices go completely silent during those periods. No emails sent, no files accessed, no network activity whatsoever. It's as if they both disappear from the digital world at exactly the same time. I felt a grim satisfaction at having this confirmed. What else? I've also discovered something more concerning. Celeste has been accessing files she shouldn't have permission to view. Client contracts, financial projections, strategic planning documents, information far beyond what an administrative assistant would need for her job functions. My stomach dropped. How is that possible? She's been using Marcus's login credentials. Either he's sharing his passwords with her, or she's obtained them through other means. But the access logs show her workstation, accessing sensitive documents using his user ID, often during times when Marcus himself is logged in elsewhere. This was worse than I'd imagined. What kind of documents? Derek's expression was grim. Everything, Vivian. Client lists, pricing, strategies, upcoming campaign proposals, financial reports. She's been systematically downloading and copying files for months. If she wanted to start a competing business or sell information to competitors, she'd have everything she needed. I sank into my chair, processing the implications. This wasn't just an affair, it was corporate espionage. Do you think Marcus knows she's doing this? Based on the pattern of access, either he's actively helping her, or he's incredibly careless with his security credentials. Given what we suspect about their relationship, I'd lean toward the former. Can you trace where this information is going? That's where it gets more interesting. Celeste has been emailing files to herself at a personal email address, but she's also been uploading them to a cloud storage account that's registered to a business entity called Morrison Strategic Consulting. The name hit me like a physical blow. Morrison, as in your last name? Derek's face had gone pale. Vivian, I need to tell you something. 3 months ago, Celeste suggested we start a consulting business together. She said she was learning so much about marketing and business development at Hartwell Associates that we should consider starting our own firm. She even registered the business name and set up the accounts. Did you agree to this? I thought it was just talk, planning for the future. She said we could start small, maybe pick up some freelance clients eventually. I never imagined she was actually stealing information to make it happen. The scope of the betrayal was staggering. Not only were Marcus and Celeste having an affair, they were systematically stealing our business intelligence, and they were using Derek's name and identity to do it. Derek, I'm so sorry. You're being used by both of them. He stood up abruptly, pacing to my window. This explains so much. The late nights, the secretive phone calls, her sudden interest in business strategy. She's been pumping me for information about cybersecurity protocols while stealing from your company and setting me up to take the blame. What do you mean setting you up? Think about it. If this theft is ever discovered, who do you think they'll blame? The IT specialist whose name is on the business registration and cloud accounts. Celeste could claim I pressured her into stealing information, or that I hacked into your systems using her credentials. Marcus could act shocked and betrayed, claiming he had no idea his assistant was involved with someone who would compromise company security. The elegance of their plan was diabolical. They were positioning Derek as the fall guy while conducting their affair and preparing to launch a competing business using our stolen information. How much information are we talking about? Derek checked his tablet. Gigabytes of data. Client lists going back 3 years, all your pricing models, campaign strategies for major accounts, financial projections, supplier contacts. If they launch Morrison's strategic consulting with this information, they could undercut your bids, steal your clients, and destroy your competitive advantages. I felt physically sick. Can you determine when they're planning to make their move? Based on the acceleration of file downloads over the past month and the fact that she just updated the business registration status to active last week, I'd say soon. Very soon. We need more evidence, enough to prove this was planned and coordinated between Marcus and Celeste, and that you had no knowledge of the theft. I can set up more detailed monitoring, capture screenshots of the unauthorized access, track the file transfers in real time. But Vivian, we're not just dealing with an affair anymore. This is criminal corporate espionage. We're going to need to involve law enforcement. The reality of our situation crystallized with stark clarity. Marcus wasn't just betraying our marriage. He was betraying our business, our employees, and our clients. He was planning to steal everything we'd built together and use it to start over with his mistress, leaving me to deal with the aftermath. How long do you need to gather comprehensive evidence? Give me until next Tuesday. That's a week to document everything, establish clear patterns, and build an irrefutable case. But Vivian, you need to be prepared for what this means. When we expose this, it's not just going to end your marriage. It's going to destroy Marcus professionally and potentially land both him and Celeste in prison. I looked out my office window at the bustling downtown Denver street, thinking about the life I'd built with Marcus, the dreams we'd shared, the family we'd created together. All of it was built on lies, and continuing to protect those lies would only enable more damage. Do it. Document everything. And Derek, I want you to know that no matter what happens, you're not responsible for any of this. They used you, just like they used me. As Derek left my office, I realized that tomorrow would mark exactly 1 week since I'd received that anonymous email. In 7 days, I'd discovered my husband's affair, hired the perfect ally, and uncovered a corporate theft scheme that threatened everything I'd worked to build. Marcus thought he was playing a sophisticated game, manipulating people and situations to get what he wanted, but he'd made one critical error. He'd underestimated the very people he was betraying, and that mistake was about to cost him everything. Over the next week, Derek and I developed a routine that felt like orchestrating an elaborate undercover operation. Every morning, we would exchange brief professional pleasantries in front of our colleagues, discussing routine IT matters and security protocols. But twice daily, Derek would visit my office with technical updates that were actually detailed reports on the evidence he was systematically gathering. By Wednesday, Derek had installed what he called comprehensive activity monitoring across our entire network. To anyone who asked, including Marcus, this was standard cybersecurity protocol for a growing company. In reality, it was the most sophisticated surveillance system Derek had ever implemented, capable of capturing every keystroke, file transfer, email, and digital interaction happening within our company. I've documented 17 separate instances of Celeste accessing confidential files using Marcus's credentials, Derek reported during our Wednesday afternoon security briefing. But more importantly, I've discovered they're not just stealing current information. They're accessing our archived projects from the past 3 years, including campaigns that were never publicly disclosed. I reviewed the screenshots Derek had captured, showing Celeste's workstation clearly displaying files she had no legitimate reason to access. What could they want with old campaign data? Competitive intelligence. If they're planning to pitch against us for renewals or expansions of these accounts, knowing our original strategies, pricing models, and client feedback would give them an enormous advantage. That afternoon, I made a decision that felt both necessary and terrifying. I called our largest client, Technovision Industries, and requested a meeting with their CEO, Patricia Chen. I need to discuss some security concerns that might affect our ongoing relationship, I told her during our phone conversation. What kind of security concerns, Vivian? I'd prefer to discuss this in person, if possible. Are you available tomorrow? Afternoon? Patricia's voice became more serious. Of course. Should I be worried about our current campaigns? Your data is secure, but there are some personnel issues I need to make you aware of before they potentially become problems. After hanging up, I realized I was taking an enormous risk. If I was wrong about the scope of Marcus and Celeste's plan, I could be damaging client relationships unnecessarily. But if I was right, and Technovision was one of their targets, Patricia needed to know before Morrison Strategic Consulting made their move. Thursday morning brought a breakthrough that changed everything. Derek knocked on my office door at 8:15 a.m., earlier than usual, his expression urgent. Vivian, you need to see this immediately. He handed me a printed email exchange that made my blood run cold. It was correspondence between Celeste and an external email address belonging to someone named Richard Volkov at a company called Apex Marketing Solutions. The emails detailed a systematic plan to steal 3 of our major clients, including Technovision Industries. Celeste had been providing Apex with our confidential bid information, allowing them to undercut our proposals by margins small enough to seem legitimate, but large enough to win the contracts. Who is Richard Volkov? I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew. That's the interesting part. Richard Volkov doesn't exist. The email address was created 3 weeks ago, and it's registered to the same address as Morrison Strategic Consulting. But the IP address traces back to a location in Riverside, specifically the apartment complex where Celeste and I live. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Marcus is Richard Volkov. That's what I think. He's been corresponding with Celeste using a fake identity, coordinating the theft of client information, and planning their competitive strategy. This way, if the emails were ever discovered, it would look like Celeste was working with an outside competitor, not with her boss. I studied the email chain more carefully. The messages discussed specific details about Technovision's upcoming product launch, information that had been shared with us in strict confidence just 2 weeks ago. They were planning to approach Technovision directly with a revolutionary new marketing strategy that was actually our strategy, refined using information we'd provided in client meetings. Derek, this is sophisticated criminal conspiracy. They're not just stealing information, they're actively sabotaging our business. Relationships. There's more. I found evidence that they've been monitoring your calendar and email to coordinate their activities around your schedule. They know when you're in client meetings, when you're traveling, when you're working from home. They've been treating your entire life like a security vulnerability to work around. The violation felt profound and personal. How long have they been doing this? The calendar monitoring started about 2 months ago, right around the time Celeste got administrative access to the company's scheduling system. But the coordinated client theft appears to be much more recent, within the past 3 weeks. I thought about recent changes in Marcus's behavior, his increased interest in my travel schedule, his questions about client meetings that had seemed like normal business curiosity at the time. What triggered them to accelerate their timeline? Derek pulled out another document. 3 weeks ago, you had a conversation with Marcus about the potential sale of Hartwell Associates to a larger marketing conglomerate. Remember? You mentioned that several firms had approached you about acquisition discussions. I did remember. Marcus had seemed uncharacteristically interested in the details, asking about potential valuations and timeline. At the time, I'd been pleased by his engagement with the strategic possibilities. They realized that if the company sold, their window for stealing clients and information would close permanently, so they accelerated their plan. Which means they're probably close to making their move. Based on the email timeline, I think they're planning to launch Morrison Strategic Consulting next week. There's a message from yesterday where Richard Volkov mentions final preparations for Monday's launch. Monday was only 4 days away. We were running out of time. Derek, I need you to be completely honest with me. If we expose this now, with the evidence you've gathered, what are the legal implications for Marcus and Celeste? Derek's expression was grim. Corporate espionage, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit theft of trade secrets, potentially racketeering if we can prove ongoing criminal enterprise. We're talking about federal charges, Vivian. This isn't just a civil matter anymore. The magnitude of what Marcus had done was staggering. He wasn't just destroying our marriage, he was committing crimes that could send him to federal prison for years. And for you, are you completely protected? The evidence clearly shows I had no knowledge of the theft. In fact, it shows I'm another victim of their scheme. But Vivian, once we report this to authorities, there's no going back. This will destroy both our families. I thought about my daughters, about the life we'd built, about the company that employed 43 people who depended on us for their livelihoods. Then I thought about Marcus and Celeste planning to steal our clients, destroy our reputation, and frame Derek for their crimes. Schedule a meeting for tomorrow afternoon with our corporate attorney and a federal prosecutor. It's time to stop being reactive and start protecting ourselves. Are you sure you're ready for this? I looked out my office window at the Denver skyline, thinking about how much my life had changed in just 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, I'd been a trusting wife and business partner. Now I was preparing to send my husband to prison. Marcus made his choice when he decided to steal from our company and frame an innocent man for his crimes. I'm not protecting someone who would do that to our employees, our clients, and our family. That evening, I sat through dinner with Marcus and our daughters, listening to him complain about a difficult client and discuss weekend plans, all while knowing that by Monday, he would be exposed as a criminal. The cognitive dissonance was almost unbearable, but what struck me most was how easily the lies came to him. He spoke about business challenges and client relationships with the same conviction he'd always had, never revealing that he was actively working to destroy everything we'd built together. As I watched him help Emma with her chemistry homework, patiently explaining molecular structures with genuine care and attention, I realized that this was perhaps the most devastating part of his betrayal. He wasn't a monster. He was a man who could compartmentalize his life so completely that he could commit crimes during the day and be a loving father at night. Tomorrow, Derek and I would begin the process of ending that compartmentalization, forever. Friday afternoon's meeting with our corporate attorney, James Wellington, and federal prosecutor Sarah Kim felt like stepping into a parallel universe where my husband was a criminal suspect rather than my business partner. We met in a conference room at Wellington's law firm, with Derek and me presenting evidence that would reshape both our lives forever. This is one of the most comprehensive corporate espionage cases I've seen involving a small business, Prosecutor Kim said after reviewing Derek's documentation. The sophistication of the scheme, the volume of stolen data, and the coordination between the perpetrators makes this a clear federal matter. James Wellington nodded grimly. Vivian, you need to understand that once we file these charges, the investigation will consume your company for months. Every employee will be interviewed, every computer will be analyzed, and every business relationship will be scrutinized. What about our clients? Can we protect them from being dragged into this? We'll need to notify them that their confidential information may have been compromised, Prosecutor Kim explained. But we can coordinate those notifications to minimize business disruption. The priority is preventing Marcus and Celeste from using the stolen information. Derek leaned forward. There's something else. I've been monitoring their communications, and they're planning to make their first client approach on Monday morning. They've scheduled a meeting with Technovision Industries under the Morrison strategic consulting name. My heart sank. Patricia Chen, Technovision's CEO, was expecting me to discuss security concerns with her, not realizing that those concerns were about to become a federal investigation. Can we stop that meeting? I asked. We can do better than that, Prosecutor Kim said with a slight smile. We can use it as evidence. Derek, can your monitoring system capture real-time communications during their meeting preparation? Absolutely. I can document every email, every file they access, every piece of stolen information they use to prepare their pitch. Perfect. Here's what we're going to do. Vivian, you'll keep your meeting with Technovision as scheduled, but you're going to tell Patricia Chen exactly what's happening. Derek will continue monitoring from your office while Marcus and Celeste are at their meeting. We'll have agents standing by to arrest them the moment they present stolen information to a client. The plan was elegant and terrifying. Instead of confronting Marcus privately, we were going to let him walk into a trap that would provide irrefutable evidence of his crimes. What about the company? How do we protect our employees and our other clients? James Wellington pulled out a legal document. We're filing for an emergency injunction to freeze all Morrison strategic consulting assets and prevent them from using any information stolen from Hartwell Associates. We're also implementing immediate security measures to protect your remaining client relationships. Over the weekend, I lived in a state of surreal normalcy while knowing that Monday would destroy everything Marcus thought he'd built. Saturday morning, he announced he was going to the office to prepare for a big presentation on Monday, claiming it was a potential new client that could transform our business. That's wonderful, I said, watching him pack his laptop with materials that I knew contained stolen client information. Tell me about this potential client. It's still confidential, Marcus said, kissing my forehead. But if it works out, it could be bigger than the Technovision account. The irony was staggering. He was describing Technovision as a potential client while planning to steal them from our own company. Sunday evening, Derek called me at home with a final update. They've finalized their presentation. It's a complete copy of our Technovision strategy, modified just enough to avoid obvious plagiarism but clearly based on our confidential client information. How are you holding up? Derek's voice was strained. I keep thinking about how Celeste seemed so excited about our future together, talking about the consulting business like it was our dream. She was planning to destroy my reputation while stealing from your company, and she made me an unwitting accomplice in my own betrayal. Derek, after tomorrow, both of us can start rebuilding our lives with the truth instead of living with lies. Monday morning arrived with deceptive normalcy. Marcus left for the office early, mentioning he wanted to review materials before his big presentation at 2 p.m. I arrived at the office at my usual time, finding Derek already at his workstation with multiple monitoring screens displaying real-time surveillance of Marcus and Celeste's activities. At 10:30 a.m., I left for my meeting with Patricia Chen at Technovision's headquarters. The conversation was one of the most difficult of my professional life. Patricia, I need to tell you something that will affect our business relationship, but I believe it's the right thing to do both legally and ethically. I explained the entire situation, the theft, the planned competition, the stolen strategies. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to anger to professional concern as she absorbed the implications. You're telling me that your husband and his assistant have been stealing our confidential information to start a competing firm, and they're meeting with us this afternoon to pitch our own strategy back to us. That's exactly what I'm telling you, and I'm asking you to help us gather evidence that will stop them permanently. Patricia leaned back in her chair. What do you need me to do? Let the meeting proceed normally, but record everything. Ask specific questions about how they developed their strategy, where they got their insights about our industry, how they plan to implement their recommendations. Federal agents will be monitoring, and your cooperation will help ensure they face appropriate consequences. Vivian, I have to ask, what does this mean for our relationship with Hartwell Associates? I understand if you need to reconsider our partnership, but I want you to know that the moment I discovered this theft, my priority was protecting your interests, even if it meant exposing my own husband's crimes. Patricia studied me for a long moment. Actually, this makes me more confident in our relationship, not less. The fact that you're willing to sacrifice your personal life to protect our business interests tells me everything I need to know about your integrity. I returned to the office at 1:15 p.m. to find Derek monitoring multiple screens showing Marcus and Celeste's final preparations. They were reviewing stolen documents, practicing their presentation, and coordinating their strategy using information that belonged to our company. At 1:45 p.m., I watched through my office window as Marcus and Celeste left together, both carrying presentation materials and looking confident about their upcoming meeting. Marcus stopped by my office to mention he'd be out for the rest of the afternoon, claiming he was meeting with a potential client that could change everything for us. "Good luck," I said, knowing that he was about to change everything, just not in the way he expected. Derek and I sat in my office, monitoring their communications and waiting for updates from the federal agents positioned near Technovision's offices. At 2:30 p.m., Derek's screen showed Marcus and Celeste accessing stolen client files from their laptops during the presentation. "They're doing it," Derek said quietly. "They're presenting our strategy as their own work, using confidential information we developed specifically for Technovision." At 3:15 p.m., Derek's phone rang. "They've been arrested," he said after a brief conversation. "Federal agents took them into custody the moment they presented stolen intellectual property to Patricia Chen. It's over." I sat in my office chair, feeling a strange combination of relief, sadness, and vindication. After 2 weeks of lies and deception, the truth was finally exposed. Marcus and Celeste were in federal custody, facing charges that would likely result in prison sentences. But as I looked around the office we'd built together, seeing our employees working at their desks with no idea that their company had just been through a federal investigation, I realized that the hardest part was still ahead. Now I had to rebuild everything: my company, my family, and my life, from the wreckage of Marcus's betrayal. The call from James Wellington came at 4:47 p.m., just as I was trying to process the reality that my husband was sitting in a federal detention facility. "Vivian, we need to implement crisis management immediately. News of the arrests will leak within hours, and we need to control the narrative before it destroys your business." I gathered our senior staff in the main conference room at 5:15 p.m., the same room where Marcus had presented countless business development updates, including fictional progress on the non-existent Pemberton account. Looking at the faces of my employees, people who had trusted us, who had built their careers around our company, I felt the full weight of what Marcus's betrayal had cost all of us. "I need to share some difficult news about recent events that will affect our company," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "This afternoon, Marcus Hartwell and Celeste Morrison were arrested by federal agents on charges related to corporate espionage and theft of trade secrets." The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer Walsh, our creative director, was the first to speak. "Are you saying Marcus was stealing from his own company?" Marcus and Celeste were systematically stealing client information, strategies, and confidential business data to start a competing firm. They were planning to use our own work to steal our clients and destroy our competitive position. Tom Bradley, our account manager, looked stunned. "The Pemberton account. Was that part of this?" "There is no Pemberton account. That was cover for their meetings to plan the theft." I watched the implications sink in across the room. Derek Morrison, our new cybersecurity specialist, helped uncover the scope of their activities. Without his expertise, we might never have discovered what was happening. Sarah Chen, our senior strategist, raised her hand tentatively. "What does this mean for our client relationships? Are we going to lose accounts because of this?" This was the question I'd been dreading. "We're implementing immediate security measures to protect all remaining client data. We're also proactively notifying every client about the situation and the steps we're taking to ensure their information remains secure. Some clients may choose to terminate their relationships with us, but we're committed to complete transparency about what happened." Derek, who had been quietly documenting everything from his workstation, joined the meeting to provide technical details about the security measures he'd implemented. As he spoke about firewalls and access controls, I saw my employees processing not just the technical information, but the realization that Celeste's husband had been the one to expose her crimes. "Derek," Jennifer asked carefully, "how long have you known about what your wife was doing?" Derek's voice was measured and professional. "I became suspicious several weeks ago when I noticed inconsistencies in Celeste's explanations of her work, activities. When Vivian hired me and I began monitoring our systems, I discovered the extent of the theft. This investigation has been as devastating for me personally as it has been for Vivian and this company." After the staff meeting, Derek and I worked late into the evening, implementing additional security protocols and preparing communications for our clients. The federal investigation had given us access to a complete inventory of everything Marcus and Celeste had stolen, which meant we could provide specific details about which client information had been compromised. The Technovision presentation was just the beginning, Derek explained as we reviewed the evidence. They had prepared similar pitches for at least 6 other major accounts, planning to approach them systematically over the next 3 months. How close did we come to losing everything? If they'd successfully stolen Technovision and used that success to approach other clients with stolen strategies, they could have destroyed your business within 6 months. The financial damage would have been in the millions, not counting the reputation destruction. That evening, I faced the hardest conversation of my life. I sat Emma and Sophie down in our living room and explained that their father had been arrested, that he would likely go to prison, and that our family would never be the same. Emma, always the more analytical of my daughters, asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mom, does this mean Daddy never loved us?" "Your father loves you both very much," I said carefully, "but he made choices that hurt a lot of people, including our family. Love and bad choices can exist at the same time, and that's something we'll all have to learn to understand." Sophie, typically more emotional, burst into tears. "What's going to happen to us? Are we going to lose our house? Will I have to change schools?" "We're going to be okay," I promised, though I wasn't entirely certain how yet. "The company is strong. We have good people working with us, and we're going to rebuild everything that was damaged." Tuesday morning brought a flood of media attention that threatened to overwhelm our crisis management efforts. Denver marketing firm executives arrested in corporate espionage scheme ran across the front page of the Denver Business Journal, complete with photos of Marcus and Celeste being led away in handcuffs. My phone rang constantly with reporters requesting interviews, competitors circling to poach our employees, and clients demanding meetings to discuss the security of their information. James Wellington had warned me this would happen, but the reality was more intense than I'd anticipated. The breakthrough came Tuesday afternoon when Patricia Chen called with unexpected news. "Vivian, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday, and I want to make a public statement supporting Hartwell Associates." "Patricia, that's generous, but you don't need to get involved in our crisis." "Actually, I think I do. What happened to your company could happen to any of us. The fact that you discovered the theft and reported it immediately, even knowing it would destroy your marriage and potentially your business, demonstrates exactly the kind of integrity we want in our business partners." Wednesday's Denver Business Journal featured a front-page interview with Patricia Chen, praising our handling of the crisis and announcing Technovision's expanded partnership with Hartwell Associates. The headline read, "Client praises firm's integrity after executive theft scandal." The positive coverage triggered a chain reaction. 3 other clients published similar statements supporting our company. 2 competitors reached out offering to collaborate rather than compete. And most surprisingly, we received inquiries from potential new clients who were impressed by our transparency and crisis management. Thursday afternoon, Derek knocked on my office door with a report that changed everything. "Vivian, the federal investigators have uncovered something significant. Marcus and Celeste weren't just planning to steal our clients. They were planning to frame me for the entire scheme. He handed me a folder containing evidence that made my stomach turn. Hidden files on Celeste's computer showed detailed plans to make it appear that Derek had hacked into our systems and stolen information, then convinced Celeste to help him establish Morrison's strategic consulting. They were going to claim that I manipulated Celeste into participating, that I used my cybersecurity expertise to cover our tracks, and that Marcus discovered the theft and was preparing to report it when we made our move to steal clients. The sophistication of their backup plan was chilling. If Derek hadn't been monitoring their activities, if we hadn't gathered overwhelming evidence of their coordination, Derek would have faced federal charges for crimes he didn't commit, while Marcus played the role of the betrayed husband and business partner. Derek, I am so sorry. Not only did they steal from us, they were planning to destroy your entire life. The irony is perfect, though, Derek said with a grim smile. By hiring me to implement security monitoring, you gave me the tools to document their plan to frame me. Their own scheme became the evidence that proves my innocence. Friday afternoon, James Wellington called with news about Marcus and Celeste's legal situation. They're both facing multiple federal charges. The evidence is overwhelming, and their attorneys are discussing plea agreements. Marcus is looking at 5 to 7 years in federal prison, Celeste at 3 to 5 years. What about restitution? Full restitution for all business damages, plus forfeiture of any assets acquired through the criminal enterprise. The Morrison strategic consulting accounts have been frozen, and all stolen information has been secured. As I hung up the phone, I realized that exactly 2 weeks had passed since I'd received that anonymous email that started this entire nightmare. In 14 days, I'd discovered my husband's affair, uncovered a criminal conspiracy, exposed corporate espionage, prevented massive financial theft, and saved an innocent man from being framed for crimes he didn't commit. The company that Marcus had tried to destroy was not only surviving, it was becoming stronger than it had ever been. And the life he'd tried to steal from me was being rebuilt on a foundation of truth instead of lies. Tomorrow would begin the next chapter of my life, one where I knew exactly who I could trust and exactly what I was capable of when everything I valued was threatened. The following Monday marked exactly 3 weeks since that first anonymous email, and I had decided it was time for complete transparency with everyone who had been affected by Marcus and Celeste's deception. I scheduled an all-hands company meeting for 10 a.m., knowing that our employees, clients, and the broader business community deserved to hear the full truth directly from me. The conference room was packed beyond capacity, with staff members standing along the walls and several clients joining via video conference. Patricia Chen from Technovision had flown in specifically for this meeting, along with representatives from 3 other major accounts. James Wellington sat in the back, ready to address any legal questions, while Derek positioned himself near. The presentation screen with detailed evidence displays prepared. 3 weeks ago, I received an anonymous email that changed everything, I began, looking directly at the faces of people who had trusted Marcus and me to protect their livelihoods and their business interests. Today, I want to share not just what happened, but how we discovered it, how we stopped it, and what we're doing to ensure it never happens again. I walked through the timeline methodically, from that first shocking email to Derek's hiring, from our investigation to the federal arrests. But what I focused on most was the systematic nature of Marcus and Celeste's betrayal, how they had weaponized trust, manipulated relationships, and nearly destroyed innocent people in pursuit of their own interests. The hardest part of this experience, I continued, wasn't discovering my husband's affair. It was realizing that someone I had trusted with my business, my family, and my future was capable of such calculated deception. Marcus didn't just betray me personally. He betrayed every person in this room, every client who trusted us with confidential information, and every principle we claimed to value as a company. Jennifer Walsh raised her hand. Vivian, what you've been through is unimaginable. But I think I speak for everyone when I say that the way you handled this crisis has shown us who you really are. You could have tried to cover this up or handled it quietly, but instead you chose transparency and accountability. Tom Bradley nodded in agreement. When you first told us about the arrests, I was terrified about losing my job. But watching how our clients have responded, seeing the integrity you've shown throughout this process, I've never been more proud to work here. Patricia Chen spoke from the video screen. From Technovision's perspective, this experience has actually strengthened our confidence in Hartwell Associates. The fact that you discovered the theft and immediately prioritized protecting our interests, even knowing it would destroy your personal life, demonstrates exactly the kind of partnership we value. But the most important moment came when Derek stepped forward to address the room. I want everyone to understand something about what Vivian did for me, he said, his voice carrying an emotion I hadn't heard before. Marcus and Celeste weren't just stealing from this company. They were planning to frame me for their crimes. If Vivian hadn't hired me, if she hadn't given me the tools to document their activities, I would be in federal prison right now for crimes I didn't commit. He pulled up a slide showing the evidence of Marcus and Celeste's plan to frame him. They registered Morrison Strategic Consulting using my name and personal information. They set up email accounts and business documents that would have made me appear to be the mastermind behind the theft. When their scheme was eventually discovered, their plan was to claim that I had manipulated Celeste and that Marcus was an innocent victim of my cybersecurity expertise. The room was silent as people absorbed the implications. Derek continued, Vivian didn't just save her company and protect your jobs. She saved my life, my reputation, and my future. And she did it by trusting me with the most sensitive investigation in the company's history, even though she barely knew me. Sarah Chen from our strategy team asked the question everyone was thinking. How do we move forward from here? How do we rebuild trust when something like this has happened? I had been preparing for this question for days. We move forward by being better than we were before. We implement systems that make this kind of deception impossible. We create a culture where transparency is valued over convenience, where difficult truths are preferred to comfortable lies. And we prove every day that what happened here was an aberration, not a reflection of who we really are. Derek activated another slide showing the comprehensive security measures he had implemented. Every employee now has individual access credentials that can't be shared. All sensitive information is tracked and monitored. Every client interaction is documented and reviewed. And most importantly, we've established protocols that require multiple approvals for any significant business decisions. But beyond the technical measures, I added, we're changing how we operate as a human organization. We're implementing quarterly 360-degree reviews where everyone evaluates everyone else, including management. We're creating anonymous reporting, systems for concerns about ethics or behavior, and we're establishing profit-sharing programs that give every employee a direct stake in the company's success. James Wellington stood to address the legal implications. From a legal standpoint, the investigation is essentially complete. Marcus and Celeste have both agreed to plea deals that include full restitution and cooperation with ongoing security reviews. All stolen information has been recovered, and all competing activities have been permanently stopped. Hartwell Associates is completely protected from any civil liability related to their actions. After the formal presentation, I opened the floor for questions, and the conversation that followed revealed something I hadn't expected. Instead of fear or uncertainty, our employees expressed anger at Marcus and Celeste for betraying the company culture they had all worked to build. I keep thinking about all the times Marcus praised our teamwork and collaboration, said Mike Torres, our lead developer. He was standing there talking about trust and integrity while planning to steal from us. It makes me sick. What bothers me most, added Lisa Park from our account management team, is how they used our success against us. They turned our growth and our client relationships into weapons to destroy what we'd built together. The meeting concluded with something I hadn't anticipated. a standing ovation. Not for surviving the crisis, but for the transparency and accountability we had demonstrated throughout the process. As people filed out, Patricia Chen approached me privately. "Vivian, I have a proposition for you. Technovision is expanding. Our marketing budget significantly next year, and we want Hartwell Associates to handle the entire campaign. But more than that, we want you to present your crisis management approach to our board of directors. Other companies need to learn from what you've accomplished here." That afternoon, Derek and I sat in my office reviewing the final documentation of Marcus and Celeste's crimes. The evidence filled multiple binders and represented the most comprehensive corporate espionage case our federal prosecutor had ever seen. "Derek, I need to ask you something personal," I said as we closed the last folder. "What are you going to do now? About your marriage? About your life?" Derek was quiet for a moment. "Celeste and I are getting divorced. There's no coming back from what she did. Not just to you and the company, but to me and our daughter. Emma deserves to grow up understanding the difference between right and wrong, and I can't teach her that while staying married to someone who planned to destroy innocent people for money. I'm sorry. I know this is destroying your family too. Actually, it's saving my family. Emma will grow up knowing that her father stood up for what was right, even when it was difficult. And she'll learn that actions have consequences, that betrayal isn't something you can just apologize for and move past." As Derek left my office, I realized that tomorrow would mark a month since this nightmare began. In 30 days, I had lost a husband, gained a business partner, prevented a criminal conspiracy, saved an innocent man's life, and transformed our company into something stronger than it had ever been. The anonymous email that had destroyed my marriage had also revealed who I really was when everything I valued was threatened. And that person was someone I was proud to be. 6 months after that devastating anonymous email, I stood in the newly renovated headquarters of Hartwell Strategic Solutions, formerly Hartwell Associates. The name change reflected more than just rebranding. It represented a complete transformation of who we were as a company and what we stood for in the business community. The renovation had been Derek's idea. "We need a space that reflects our new reality," he had said 3 months earlier when we were discussing the company's future. "Somewhere that feels like a fresh start, not a reminder of what Marcus tried to destroy." Derek was now our chief security officer and my business partner, holding a 20% stake in the company that we had restructured entirely. The employees had been given equity positions based on their tenure and contributions, creating a true collaborative ownership model that made everyone invested in our collective success. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our new conference room as I prepared for our quarterly all-hands meeting. These gatherings had become something special. Not just business updates, but celebrations of what we had built together from the ashes of betrayal. "Good morning, everyone," I began, looking at faces that had become family over these difficult months. Our team had grown from 43 to 68 employees, with new hires specifically seeking us out because of our reputation for integrity and transparency. 6 months ago, we faced the worst crisis in our company's history. Today, I want to share some numbers that show what we've accomplished together. I activated the presentation screen, revealing financial data that made several people gasp audibly. Our revenue is up 137% compared to last year. We've signed 12 new major accounts, including 3 Fortune 500 companies that specifically chose us because of how we handled the crisis. Most importantly, our employee satisfaction scores are the highest they've ever been, and our client retention rate is 96%. Jennifer Walsh, now our creative director and also an equity partner, raised her hand. "Vivian, I think what's most amazing is that we're not just surviving what Marcus did to us, we're thriving because of how we responded to it." The applause that followed felt different from the supportive gesture 6 months ago. This was celebration, not just solidarity. Derek stood to present our security metrics, but his role had evolved far beyond cybersecurity. We've now completed comprehensive security audits for 18 other companies who want to implement our transparency and monitoring protocols. The Hartwell method of crisis management is becoming an industry standard. The Hartwell method had been coined by a Harvard Business School case study that analyzed our response to the Marcus and Celeste situation. 3 universities now used our experience as a teaching example of ethical leadership under extreme pressure. After the formal meeting, I retreated to my office to prepare for the afternoon's most significant event, the sentencing hearing for Marcus and Celeste. They had both pled guilty to federal charges, but today a judge would determine their actual punishment. My phone rang at 1:30 p.m. It was James Wellington calling from the courthouse. "Vivian, the sentencing is complete. Marcus received 6 years in federal prison plus full restitution of $2.3 million. Celeste received 4 years plus restitution of $800,000. The judge specifically cited the sophistication of their scheme and their plan to frame Derek as factors that increased their sentences. I felt a complex mixture of relief and sadness. The man I had loved for 15 years would spend the next 6 years in prison, but justice had been served for the crimes he had committed against so many innocent people. "There's something else," James continued. "Marcus asked to make a statement before sentencing. He publicly apologized to you, to Derek, to the company employees, and to the clients. He took full responsibility and acknowledged that his actions were inexcusable." "Did he say anything else?" "He said that losing you and the girls was the real punishment, and that he hoped someday you might be able to forgive him. But he also said he understood if forgiveness wasn't possible." That evening, I drove to Derek's new apartment to pick up Emma for dinner. Derek had moved out of the place he'd shared with Celeste, finding a bright 2-bedroom near a good elementary school. For his daughter, our children had formed an unexpected friendship through this experience, bonding over the shared trauma of having their families destroyed by their parents' choices. "How are you doing with everything?" Derek asked, as we watched Emma and my daughter Sophie playing together in his living room. "I'm realizing that I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago," I replied honestly. The woman who received that anonymous email was trusting to the point of naivety. She believed that good intentions and hard work were enough to protect what she valued. And now? Now I understand that protecting what you value requires vigilance, courage, and sometimes making decisions that hurt people you love. Marcus's betrayal taught me that trust has to be earned continuously, not just given once and assumed to last forever. Derek nodded thoughtfully. Celeste's betrayal taught me something similar. I spent 3 years thinking that love meant accepting someone unconditionally. Now I understand that real love requires accountability. If you truly love someone, you don't enable them to become someone who can destroy innocent people. That weekend, I took Emma and Sophie to visit the Denver Art Museum, something that had become our monthly tradition. As we stood in front of a sculpture about transformation and renewal, Sophie asked a question that caught me off guard. "Mom, do you think Daddy's in prison because he's a bad person, or because he made bad choices?" I knelt down to her level, thinking carefully about my answer. "I think your father is a person who made increasingly bad choices until those choices changed who he was. Prison is the consequence of those choices, but it's also an opportunity for him to remember who he used to be. Will he ever come home? In 6 years, he'll be released from prison. But our home, our family, our life, that's different now. We've built something new, something stronger, and we can't go back to the way things were." Emma, Derek's daughter, had been listening quietly. "My mommy says she's sorry for what she did, but Derek says sorry doesn't fix some things." "Derek is right," I told both girls. "Some actions have consequences that can't be undone, but that doesn't mean we can't forgive people or that we can't build good lives from difficult situations." Monday morning brought news that felt like the final piece of our transformation. The Denver Business Council had selected Hartwell Strategic Solutions for their Business Ethics Excellence Award, recognizing our response to the crisis and our ongoing commitment to transparency. The award comes with a $50,000 grant for ethical business education, I announced to the team during our weekly staff meeting. We're going to use that money to establish an internship program for students studying business ethics and cybersecurity. Derek smiled from across the conference table. We should call it the Second Chances Program, giving young people opportunities to learn about doing business the right way. As the meeting concluded and people returned to their work, I remained in the conference room, looking out at the Denver skyline and reflecting on the journey that had brought us here. The anonymous email that had shattered my world had ultimately revealed strengths I didn't know I possessed. The betrayal that nearly destroyed our company had transformed it into something more successful and more meaningful than Marcus and I had ever built together. Most importantly, the crisis that should have left me bitter and broken had instead taught me about resilience, justice, and the power of choosing truth over comfort. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Saw the article about your award. So proud of everything you've accomplished. You've turned the worst thing that ever happened to you into something beautiful. As I packed up my files and prepared to head home to my daughters, I realized she was right. The worst betrayal of my life had become the foundation for the best version of myself. Marcus had thought he was stealing my future when he planned to destroy our marriage and our company. Instead, he had unknowingly set me free to discover what I was truly capable of when everything I valued was at stake, and what I was capable of, it turned out, was more than either of us had ever imagined. Coming up next, you'll see 2 more stories we handpicked just for you. If this one struck a chord, you're going to love what's next. Tap to keep the journey going.